The top 10 recruits of 2016. Making these videos now is really starting to make me feel old. I remember making these videos about dudes way older than me, and now I'm a few years older than the players in this video. This class had dudes like DK Metcalf, Jalen Hurts, and AJ Brown, none of which were in the top 10.
Today, we'll go over each of these recruits, talk about what made them special, how their time in college went, and see how far their football careers took them. There are some beasts in this class that became all-time great players in college and even the pros, while others struggled, transferred, and didn't live up to expectations. Anyways, let's kick things off with our number 10 recruit.
Coming out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the number 10 ranked recruit in 2016 was defensive end Nick Bosa. Renowned for his blend of power and quickness, Bosa dominated offenses while at St. Thomas Aquinas. There was a longtime Florida scout that said, quote, "If you don't double team him, you sign your death warrant."
Nick Bosa ended up committing to Ohio State, and as the younger brother to 2014 Big Ten Player of the Year Joey Bosa, there was some serious hype for the younger brother Nick entering his freshman year. Joey was 2 years older than Nick and had been a 4-star recruit and had dominated for 3 years at Ohio State, helping them win a national title before declaring for the NFL draft and getting selected 3rd overall in 2016. Months later, Nick would start his freshman year, taking the place of his brother. It's also worth noting that their dad and uncle were both first-round NFL picks back in the day.
Nick and Joey did play a year together in high school, and man, imagine playing against these two on the same defensive line. As a true freshman, Nick Bosa played and immediately had an impact. He racked up 29 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. Then as a sophomore, he became one of the top players in the country. With his 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and a blocked kick, Bosa was named a first-team All-American player and won the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. The following year, through his first 3 games, he got off to an incredible start, but unfortunately suffered a serious core injury that required surgery and ended his season. After that, Bosa decided to forego his senior year and entered the NFL draft.
Despite a relatively short college career, Nick Bosa established himself as one of the best players in the nation during his time with the Buckeyes. He was widely viewed as one of, if not the top prospect entering the 2019 NFL draft due to his freakish size and ability, and he would eventually go number 2 overall to the San Francisco 49ers.
Since making it to the NFL, Bosa has only continued to dominate. He started off his career winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, and to this point has been named to 5 Pro Bowls and won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2022. When he's not injured, he's one of the best players in the game, and certainly he's exceeded his original top 10 recruit hype. Coming in at number 9, Oluwole Betiku Jr. was another dominant high school defensive end. Playing out of Junipero Serra High School, he goes by the nickname Wale, and he didn't play football until 2014, which happened after he moved from Nigeria. He had just 1 year of high school football under his belt, and he became a top 10 recruit in the nation. That's pretty wild.
As a high schooler, he looked like a full-grown man. He was pretty raw though, considering he only had about a year of playing time under his belt. But clearly the potential with him was through the roof, and with offers all around the country, Wale committed to USC. But after arriving at USC, Wale struggled to get onto the field. He barely played as a freshman, and in year 2, he was a backup who made minimal impact, accounting for just 2 assisted tackles in 2 years.
As a junior, Wale ended up redshirting due to rehabbing from hip surgery. After 3 years at USC, Wale became the 6th member of USC's 2016 class to transfer, and he ended up at Illinois. Later, he admitted he hated game days at USC due to a lack of playtime. Once arriving at Illinois, Wale immediately became an impact player. By the midway point of the 2019 season, he was named to the Bednarik Award watch list as he led the nation in tackles for loss through 3 games. By the end of the season though, his production slowed down, but he far and away led the team in sacks with 9 and finished with 13 tackles for loss. He ended up being named 3rd team All Big Ten.
This was his final year of his college career. In what began as a big disappointment, somewhat turned around by this point. Although Wale never got close to that 5-star potential people expected from him, I think he's a good example of a guy who was just too raw entering college. Sure, looking like this in high school makes it easier to just blow guys up and make plays, but against Division I players in college, it's another story. Technique and football IQ play a much larger role at the next level. And here's a quote from a 2019 24/7 Sports article that is pretty telling. Quote, he described his football knowledge when he arrived at USC as, get in the backfield and get sacks. Afterward, you hear that throaty laugh, followed shortly by an admission. We had a playbook in high school, but I don't think I ever remembered it.
Wale went undrafted after 2019 and served on the Giants practice squad in 2020, but never made a final roster.
Now, before we continue, this video is brought to you by SeatGeek. With an epic football season coming to a close, it's time for many of us to figure out what to do for our next 6 months. I know I'm going to try and get out to a couple events, like maybe a spring baseball game once their season starts. And with over 70,000 events available every day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more, there's definitely something that you'd enjoy. So why not get out and go do something? With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. And SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good, and red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And if you're a first-time user of SeatGeek, use my promo code KTO for $20 off tickets. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code KTO. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Shout out to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now let's get back to the video.
Coming out of Elder High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, the #8 recruit in 2016 was offensive tackle Tommy Kraemer. Listed at a massive 6'5" and 309 pounds, Tommy was a monster run blocker whose size overwhelmed anyone they put in front of him. His dominance won him Gatorade Ohio Player of the Year, which is pretty wild considering he was a lineman, and it's rarely given to a non-skill position player. Tommy ended up committing to Notre Dame.
After redshirting, Kraemer became the starting right tackle for the Irish. This offensive line was truly legendary. Along with the 5-star Kraemer, it had Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson, 2 future top 10 picks. It also had Sam Mustipher, who became an NFL center. Notre Dame's run game in 2017 was on another level, averaging over 260 yards per game. And they set the modern single game record of rush yards per carry in a single game versus Boston College, averaging over 10 yards per rush. Kraemer was a solid run blocker, but he was a bit slow and not as effective as a pass blocker, often getting beat to the outside. This forced the team to move him from tackle to guard later in his college career.
Overall, Kraemer developed into a cornerstone offensive lineman for Notre Dame for 4 years. He did have his 2019 season cut short due to injury, but other than that, he was a reliable player. By the time he was a senior, he had earned first-team All-ACC honors. Here's one way he was described as a player. Quote, he was able to maul over most defenders, and with monstrous-sized hands, he never let go once he locked in. However, he can be rather slow, even prior to his sprained meniscus. Kraemer certainly had the size necessary to play big boy college football, but his athleticism didn't translate to top-tier NFL status. He went undrafted in 2021 and became a fringe practice squad backup level player. He made a couple active rosters and even played in 13 games over the course of 3 seasons. He was waived for the final time in May 2024. Coming out of Westfield High School in Houston, Texas, the #7 recruit was defensive tackle Ed Oliver. Listed at 6'2" and 277 pounds, Oliver was praised for his rare athleticism, explosive quickness, and relentless motor. He even ran the ball, which was terrifying. As a dominant blue chipper, Oliver was the type of player that could go anywhere in the country. But surprisingly, he decided to stay in his hometown and commit to Houston. This made Oliver the first ESPN 5-star player ever to commit to a non-Power 5 school. Clearly, his proximity to home and playtime were deal breakers.
This move paid off big time. Oliver immediately started and completely dominated from the get-go. He racked up 5 sacks, 66 total tackles, and a staggering 22.5 tackles for loss as a freshman, which was tied for 3rd in the entire country. Oliver's incredible freshman year earned him the Bill Willis Trophy, given to the nation's top defensive lineman. He became the first freshman ever to win this award.
The following year, Ed continued to dominate, being named first-team All-American and winning the Outland Trophy given to the nation's top interior defensive lineman. He would once again be named a consensus All-American the following year, and then he declared for the NFL draft.
Here's how much of a team game football really is. This dude wreaked havoc for 3 years on Houston's defensive line. He had a SEC player build, dominating against smaller conference opponents. And yet, the team wasn't even that good while he was there. The year before he arrived, they went 13-1. And with this dude for 3 years, they never won double-digit games. They were ranked in the top 10 for half the season during his true freshman year, but for most of his career, they were unranked.
Anyways, Oliver projected as a top-tier prospect, and many regarded him as one of the top D linemen coming out of college. It was no surprise when he went in the top 10, going 9th to the Buffalo Bills. Since being drafted, Oliver has been a solid starter for the Bills. He hasn't made any Pro Bowls or anything, but he's been a pretty productive player, and is still currently active in the NFL. Coming out of Lanier High School in Georgia, the number 6 recruit in 2016 was another defensive tackle, Derrick Brown. Known for his massive size, power, athleticism, motor, and disruptive ability, Brown racked up a monstrous 270 tackles during his high school career. He had the makings of a future star at Alabama or Georgia, but he ended up committing to Auburn instead.
After arriving to Auburn, Brown's career became a true testament of growth and development. Every year he got better. He was a rotational backup as a freshman, a pretty solid starter as a sophomore, then he became one of the best players on the team, earning second-team All-SEC honors as a junior. Finally, as a senior, he completely dominated.
Brown was an unblockable force on the inside, racking up 55 tackles and 12.5 tackles for loss, on his way to being named an All-American and winning SEC Defensive Player of the Year. By the end of his college career, Brown had all the makings of a first-round pick, and in 2020, that's exactly what happened. He was selected 7th overall in 2020 by the Carolina Panthers, and since getting drafted, he's been a reliable starter for them. In 2023, he set the all-time record for tackles by a defensive tackle in a season, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment. Coming out of Allen High School in Allen, Texas, the number 5 recruit was offensive tackle Greg Little. At 6'5", 305 pounds, Little was praised for his elite build, exceptional length, superior quickness, and high football IQ. His high school quarterback was Kyler Murray, and these two helped lead Allen to back-to-back undefeated seasons and state championships in 2013 and 2014.
Initially, he committed to Texas A&M, but later decommitted and chose Ole Miss. Once arriving at Ole Miss, Little ended up starting 5 games as a true freshman at left tackle. He had massive shoes to fill, considering the guy Ole Miss had before him at left tackle was first-round phenom Laramie Tunsil.
Eventually, Little developed into a stalwart left tackle for the Rebels, earning second-team All-SEC honors as a sophomore and first-team honors as a junior. Too bad the team was terrible while he was there. Luckily for him, he had proven himself enough to leave school early, and Greg Little was drafted in the early 2nd round by the Carolina Panthers. Unfortunately, things didn't pan out too well for him in the pros. He was mostly a rotational player who started a handful of games in Carolina, later being traded to Miami, where he was a rotational guy for a year, before not re-signing with the team, and not making another final roster. Coming out of Lake Stevens High School in Washington, the number 4 recruit in the country was pro-style quarterback Jacob Eason. With a massive 6'6" frame, Eason possessed a cannon for an arm. He was quite a raw prospect though, but the talent was undeniable. Eason was so big early in his high school career that he signed with Georgia before his junior year began.
As a true freshman, Eason wasn't initially named the starter, but he came in during the 4th possession on opening day to replace Grayson Lambert, and he went on to have a stellar debut, defeating number 22 North Carolina. But as expected from a true freshman starting quarterback, there were bumps in the road after that. The team barely escaped Nicholls State the following week, and then they proceeded to lose 5 games over the course of the season.
With this being Kirby Smart's first season, this was a tough year that many questioned the move getting rid of Mark Richt at head coach. For Eason, he showed promise, but left something to be desired with the inconsistencies throughout the year. The following season on opening day, Eason sustained a knee injury that would knock him out for a while. In the meantime, backup freshman Jake Fromm played very well in his absence. Georgia found themselves in national title contention, and when Eason was healthy enough to return, the team chose to continue rolling with Fromm, who ended up leading them to a national title before losing to Alabama.
The following season, in a decision that everyone expected, Eason transferred away from Georgia, and he ended up landing at Washington. This was the year before the portal opened, so Eason had to sit out for an entire season before getting an opportunity. Once 2019 rolled around, Eason took over as the Husky starter and in a lot of ways resembled what he looked like at Georgia.
He would flash promise with his incredible physical tools, but then he would begin to struggle and start playing inconsistent. He would throw absolute rockets even when the situation didn't call for it, like on a checkdown. The year was considered a disappointment for the team as they went 8-5, their worst finish in 4 seasons.
Reports came out that Jacob Eason had a reputation for being a big-time partier early in his college career and could easily be distracted. This was something that concerned NFL scouts during the draft process, but ultimately those concerns weren't too bad as he had matured, and he still had NFL size and a massive arm to work with. So he ended up getting drafted in the 4th round by the Colts in the 2020 NFL Draft.
In 4 NFL seasons bouncing around the league, Eason served as a backup, practice squad level guy who threw 10 career passes. Coming out of IMG Academy in Florida, Shea Patterson was the number 3 overall recruit and top-ranked quarterback in the country. This dude was a much different player compared to Jacob Eason. Standing at 6'1", Patterson was praised for his athleticism, improvisation, and playmaking ability. The IMG phenom ended up committing to Ole Miss. Initially, Patterson was supposed to be redshirting as a freshman, but Chad Kelly tore his ACL early into the season, and Patterson took over as the starter. On his debut, he led Ole Miss to a thrilling comeback victory over Texas A&M, where he threw for 338 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He ended up playing in 3 games. The next 2 were blowout losses where Patterson was not as effective.
The following year, he took over as the team starter, but the season was largely overshadowed by controversies due to NCAA investigations into the school over numerous violations. These controversies led to head coach Hugh Freeze resigning before the season. The school gave themselves a self-imposed bowl ban for the next year. Patterson headed this sinking ship and had a roller coaster season that ended early due to a knee injury.
Watching clips of him reminds me of Manziel. Not the level of success, just the playstyle. Following 2017, Patterson decided he wanted out of the disaster that was going on. He had felt deceived by the school about the sanctions, as well as just feeling uncomfortable about the instability of the program for the foreseeable future.
Patterson wound up at Michigan, where he became the starter in 2018. Also, he didn't have to sit out for a year because there was an amendment made to the transfer waiver guidelines, specifically for his situation. Also, this was 6 months before the portal began, so he was one of the last people to transfer before the change. There was some serious hype for him entering that season. Some projected him as a future number 1 overall pick. After losing on opening day, Michigan won 10 straight games, putting themselves in playoff contention. But a crushing loss to Ohio State ended their hopes.
Overall, Patterson was a decent but not special quarterback that season, and that same narrative continued the following year. He struggled in big games, like in their loss versus Penn State, their second time playing Ohio State, and in the bowl game versus Alabama.
Ultimately, many fans felt like Patterson was overrated as a recruit and wasn't as talented as perceived. He had small hands, and his athleticism didn't translate as well as people thought it could. Like I said, he gave me Manziel vibes, but a less effective Manziel. He went from being a 5-star with future first-round pick expectations to going undrafted after his final season at Michigan.
After failing to make an NFL practice squad, he has bounced around in other leagues since. Coming out of Wake Forest High School in North Carolina, the number 2 recruit was defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. Standing at a massive 6'4" and 327 pounds, Lawrence was a true space eater. He dominated the line of scrimmage with his incredible strength and power, which made him unmovable. He finished his career with 28 sacks and over 200 tackles, and he ended up committing to Clemson.
Right away, Lawrence became a beast on the defensive line. He racked up 55 tackles and 55 sacks as a freshman. This was the most sacks by a freshman ever for Clemson. This led him to winning the 2016 ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. And in the national title game, he served a critical role to help defeat Alabama.
Over the next 2 years, Lawrence became one of the premier players in the country, being named a first-team All-American in 2018. He didn't put up massive statistical numbers, but in his role, they usually don't. He was a space eater who took on a lot of double teams and took away running lanes. At the time in college, he was one of, if not the best in the country at what he did.
Now, he did end up testing positive for PEDs that season and was ruled ineligible for the playoffs, but the team still did go on to win it all. His rare combo of size, power, and athleticism made him incredibly difficult to slow down for opposing offenses. Plus, he complemented his physical gifts with elite technique that had scouts very excited when he declared for the NFL draft after his junior season.
Lawrence was drafted in the 2019 NFL Draft 17th overall by the New York Giants, and since being selected, he's developed into one of their best players. Nicknamed Sexy Dexy, he's now a multi-year Pro Bowler who's currently considered one of the best players in the league, ranking 17th in the NFL Top 100 in 2025. And for the number one recruit in 2016, coming out of Paramus Catholic High School in New Jersey, Rashan Gary was the USA Today Defensive Player of the Year as a defensive tackle. Originally, he had started his high school career at a different school, but later transferred to Paramus Catholic. Considered a generational talent, Gary's 6'5", 290-pound frame towered over opponents. Combine that with explosive athleticism, an exceptional first step and hand speed, and the versatility to play on the inside and outside of the line.
In the 2016 Under Armour High School All-American game, Gary recorded 6 tackles and 3 sacks and won the game's MVP. He was the third player ever to be named the number one recruit on all 4 major recruiting sites, and he ended up committing to Michigan, the school that had hired his former head coach to become the director of player personnel and recruiting.
Once arriving at Michigan, he played right away and had a few good performances. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was enough to flash his future potential. The following season saw an expected improvement. Gary was named to the All-Big Ten first team, collecting 11.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks.
Expected to become one of the best players in the country as a junior, Gary was placed on the preseason watch list for all the major defensive line awards, but ultimately his season was good but a bit underwhelming. He dealt with a shoulder injury that hampered his play throughout the year, and ultimately missed all of October, but he was still good enough to earn first-team all-conference honors.
To that point, Gary had been a good player for Michigan, but certainly not generational level dominant. His whole college career was a journey of wild expectations, followed by some pretty decent production, but it did always leave something to be desired. And regardless of how he was perceived, he was such a special talent as a prospect that he declared for the NFL draft and went 12th overall in the first round to the Green Bay Packers in 2019.
For being a mid-first round pick, Gary was a bit underwhelming to start his NFL career. It took him till year 3 to become a starter for the Packers, and then eventually 6 years in, he became what they had hoped for, being named to a Pro Bowl. His improved production by 2023 earned him a $170 million extension, but since getting paid, fans have often been frustrated with him.
Here's a quote from NJ.com where a scout described Gary as the following: "I'm not sold that Rashan Gary loves football," a third scout said. "His football career is not very good. His interview wasn't good. He thinks he's this great worker. He has plays that he could have made but didn't finish or pursue. He's still productive, but fans accused him of quitting on plays and often being lazy, which contributed to his inconsistent production. He's kind of like a less hyped version of Jadeveon Clowney. He was an incredibly gifted athlete, but lacked great pass rushing moves and bend." So overall, this top 10 is actually one of the better ones I've covered. There really isn't any major bust, and many of them went on to have success in college as well as the NFL. It's always awesome to see a guy go from being a star in high school to a star in college, and finally a star in the NFL.
They enter the backfield with a 4-man rush into Herbert. Batted down, picked off.